Well, I don't have to introduce myself. Everybody knows who I am. This is the only presentation I get to do today, but I'll have 4 tomorrow and 5 on Thursday. Hopefully I'll fix what this issue is as far as the machine. Let's see if it stays like this for the rest of the way. But I'm more on the technical aspect. I like to teach people how to do certain things and walk through some things that I encounter. And becoming a consultant, I basically get more involved with how things happen under the hood than what I used to do when I was an instructor. And one of the things I always told my instructors is, if you're going to teach a class, you don't teach the slide, you teach the tool. Because people don't come to listen to read what the slides are. They come to hear what you know about the tool to try to give them some advice or heads up or anything like that. So in this one, I decided to go ahead and go with Smart IT. And some of the changes, the issues that I run into with my current customer, again, you won't know what those things are until you actually participate in some of their requirements and requests and things like that. So not only am I going to show you what Smart IT can do, but I'm also going to walk you through some of the administration changes that I had to do and some of the questions that were asked that you couldn't do in that capacity. So Smart IT is more along the lines of basically just a user-friendly front-end interface as a service request functionality, but it's more for your support agents. It's more for them to look at tickets, look at knowledge articles, work order requests. They could put in broadcast messages, which I do have a broadcast session that I'm going to show you that it's not the best. Not everybody sees the broadcast through Smart IT. They don't see it through DWP. So I actually created one through Service Request Management. And not only when you flag it as that, if somebody has an issue related to that broadcast, now you have a ticket that can be triggered off of that service request. So your broadcast would be a service request designator. But the thing is, though, because it is SRM, they would have to come through the Smart Recorder to pull it up through Smart IT. Smart Recorder will let you do service request tickets, even if it's through Digital Workplace. Now, I haven't played around with DWP to build it there because I don't have a DWP environment with my current customer. They're still on the old SRM side. But how many of you actually use Smart IT? How many of your users even use this console here? Because one of the frustrating things is when you do broadcast, it shows up on the left-hand side. Well, how many people are going to go over it? Or outages or quick tickets or needs attention or things like that. And then it scrolls. And the problem is with like needs attention, they stay there. They stay and they build up on this form. So one of the things you'd have to look at is what form is that pulling in from, and delete the records that you don't need anymore. Because there's a lot of these notifications of needs attention and activity logs that the tickets have been closed for like a year and it builds up. So one of the things I always do is set that form up for archiving and get rid of the records. Unfortunately, my customer lets people put their tickets in pending a year ago and they're still in pending. And I'm like, shouldn't this already be done because somebody didn't get access? Did you give them access? Nobody goes back and looks at it. So things like that you're going to run into. So some of the things that I run into in Smart IT are the length of tickets. So when you go to the ticket console, you only have out of the box the 30 days of creation of tickets. So you'd have to extend it back. Well, I've had to extend it back further and further because now my customer's up to a year and they can't see these open tickets that are a year old. So in order for them to see those that are over a year old, I had to go to 725 days. So they can go back to 2-year point. And once we reach the 2-year mark, guess what I'm going to have to do? Extend it again because I can't get them to change their process. On the right-hand side are these reports, and they don't use them. So we defaulted. So one of the things you can do in Smart IT is default this to the ticket console, which is what I would do. Because as a support agent, they're going to get into the ticket console. They're not concerned about this functionality right here. But then when I do that, guess what? I lose the broadcast. I lose those things that they need to be aware of and so forth. One of the functionalities that Smart IT provides you is with on the right-hand side is the self-help. The self-help designator, you can look at, it doesn't change. It's kind of like those old ITSM installed online forms that you had to do. And they're really the old, how many of you ever even used those? I mean, they really don't match your custom process. So that's what this is here. Just give them an idea, give them a flavor. Guess what? Put them as a knowledge article. Let them have it as an article if they're looking for something. Because I don't even use this. I don't go into the self-help. But it's there. As an administrator, you do have some admin functionalities under the configuration side that allow you to go in and make some adjustments and so forth. That also allows you to go in and see what resource connections that you can go into as well. One of the things that you can actually go into, if you wanted to, is to change the style, the look and feel of your knowledge templates. If you really wanted to. I don't bother mine because they're okay with it. They like it straight out of the box. But I know there's customers out there that just don't like the format and they want to have their own functionality. Now, of course, here's a question for you. Do you want to know more about knowledge management, or would you like to know more about, what was I going to get rid of? Smart reporting. That's the dilemma I have right now. Do you want to know more about knowledge management? Do you want to know more about smart reporting? Keep in mind what's happening on 28 April. Smart reporting is going away. So I have to switch out something, and I'm just asking for that help there. Do you want smart reporting or do you want knowledge management? All right, so then we're going to change the schedule tomorrow. We have Kinetic coming in and doing a presentation at 3:30. So I'm going to move that knowledge into the position of smart reporting. You'll still get the presentation deck of smart reporting. You'll still get the lab exercises. What I did was I built a view in the foundation data so I could run reports against the foundation data because they didn't give you that in smart reporting. So I show you how I built it and how I pulled that report information from LDAP and things like that to give them that report. So it is a custom view and it is custom reports. So you'll still get those lab exercises and the data. It's just I will not present. Okay. When you go into Smart IT, you do have these views that are available to incident, work order, task, problem, change, no release. I talked to Peter Adams. They're not going to do one for release management. So that can be a hiccup for you in that aspect. Another thing about this here is how many of you are using the progressive web app capability? If you use PWA, you lose this functionality to add in any attributes and so forth through here, which is understandable because PWA has allowed you to go back to the Dev Studio and making it there, look and feel at that point. But this allows you to do several things, lets you do actions where they can click on a link. One of the things I don't like about Smart IT is it doesn't allow my support staff to go in and change their notifications. They don't want email notifications. They can't go in there and change it on the CTM people form. So I have to create an action to send them back to the CTM form, people form, so they can make those changes in the back end. So it's static form, but still they like that little functionality. So let them control their still management functionality that they had in ITSM, or they get it from here. So you could do that with your quick links that you want to do within the process here, where it says add remove actions. And you can add those either on the ticket console, or you can add it on the console itself. One of the things I usually have to do is if I make a change in the Dev Studio, I have to click the refresh media, or I'm sorry, go over here in the top right-hand corner, click on refresh server cache, so I can refresh the Smart IT server to pick up any changes that I did on the forms on the back end side, especially if I'm adding views and fields and things like that in that capacity. You have to integrate the results of your application with Smart IT in that aspect. So does it affect this? No, because you're building kind of like custom apps in that aspect in Innovation Suite. ITSM is really coming from here, but if you're ignoring the ITSM side of it, then yes, it would affect this. Okay. And especially, I guess in 2008, I don't see LJ. When you go to 2103, it's the container side of it. Would that have an effect on it? I don't know because I'm not dealing with the containers. So I don't know if that has an effect on that process. I don't think so because you still can use the ITSM side. I mean, the app as a container itself. So it shouldn't affect in that capacity. But I don't know. He would be the one to actually answer that. It hasn't affected 2008. I can tell you that. Okay, so we already talked about the dashboard, touched up on that a little bit. This is the ticket console. The ticket console allows you to do just like the ticket consoles back in ITSM, filter records and things like that. But there are some limitations that you don't get in the other side. Like, for example, you can add an attribute to let them see it. Well, before you could go to the form, add it to the table, and there's the column. Well, now you have to add the field to like 4 or 5 different forms, and then you have to refresh the caching server to show it up on here. So I have that in here. If I have time enough to do it, I'll show you all that process. One of the other things I'm going to show you a slide on is the size. You're limited to 30 characters in size on the minimum size. So if you look on my columns, do you see where it says TLA site and you see where it says status? The shrinkage of it is 30 characters. My customer wanted small because the TLA site TLA site is only 3 characters. It's never going to be more. So why am I eating up all these, or pixels, I should say? Why can't I shrink it up? And that's the smallest I can make. And it's, according to Peter Adams, it's in the coding of Smart IT, which we don't have access to. Okay, so configuring Smart IT. Some of the things that you want to do is if you're going to incorporate DWP Advanced into Smart IT, these are the steps that you have to perform. So you'd have to go into, and I'm old school, I love the configuration generic UI form. I don't like to go to that server group console and go through there because I get confused. Okay, so I'm old school. I'll come to here. I do my start functionality to find the SPE, and then I can go in and make these changes. And once I do that, these are the changes that you have to put in the table. So you have to populate your domain, your admin password, your admin user, and the URL that you're going to. Okay. Then you have to go in and test the connection that you just put in. So now you have to pull up this form, SPE connection config form, and hit the test connection to see what you put in is accurate. If you didn't do any spelling or whatever. Okay. And then you have to go in back into the centralized configuration side, pull up the Smart IT side, and modify those 5 parameters. Any questions on it? Again, this is to get DWP Advanced to show up in your Smart Report. And then you could also come into here where you just set the configuration options. This is where you can come in and make those changes, and you can see the confusion. For me, I just find it simple to go in and make the adjustments and so forth. But then you have the document that's down here that you can go ahead and take a look and see what you need to do as well. Some of the other things that you can do to configure Smart IT, you just come into the centralized configuration and you want to make some adjustments to the parameters. One of the parameters my boss wanted was the needs attention flag. This is where now you can show the needs attention on the ticket console. So they can see the needs attention. They can flag it as it needs attention. What I have not found out is how I can remove that needs attention if I've already attended. Okay. And it gets stored in that column of your dashboard on the left-hand side as needs attention, and it's going to show up as needs attention there. And I'm like, I've already saw it. I've already looked at it. I've already read it. How can I acknowledge it? And so it doesn't really do anything. So my boss said, turn it off because it was useless in that capacity. So then I had to go in and remove the needs attention from the back-end form so it wouldn't come up on the dashboard. And it does slow it down. I mean, by the time we got done testing and everything else in my QA environment, we are already up to 200,000 records, and it was getting a little slower. You could start seeing that dashboard loading up slow. Okay. So something to be aware of in that aspect. So this is where it shows up with the flag, hey, needs attention. The notification feature, you can do a push notification in Smart IT to put on their phone and so forth. But if you want to turn that off, it's already turned off by out of the box, but you can turn it on by saying true if they want to have it. To the support agents. In DWP is different. When I talk about DWP, which has push notifications and they go to their own profile and change it, this is Smart IT. It's an all or nothing. It's not for one group that says they want it, the other group can't do it. It's all of them do it or all of them don't. Pushed out to their mobile. This filter one basically allows you to add in 2 filters in the resource tab that you can look for. And when I say resources, you can look for knowledge articles by company, or you can look at it by operational category, or you can look at it by both. If you check both of them, it's going to look for both settings in the knowledge article for the resource tab. Because right now you're just doing it by keyword search. Whatever's on the keyword search that you're looking for, it's going to pull up your possible articles. So if you add the filters, that allows you to look at it for a specific company, if you have different companies, or you can look at it for a different podcast. What I really wish they would do is podcast, because how many of you use knowledge management? Anybody use knowledge management? On your approvals, do you have approvals on your knowledge management, or do you auto approve? No. Okay, well, how do you flag for somebody to approve it? What is your approval mapping? It goes to group. But how does that group know to get it? There has to be a criteria on there to let them know. But here's what I'm getting at. When I worked at the American Red Cross, the finance manager said, I want to know only those articles that are going to publish to the public. She didn't care if they came internally. She only wanted to have it for public. So we still had to go to the regional manager to approve anything, whether it's public or not, and then turn around, and if it was public, give it to her, give it to the finance manager. So I used the product categorization is what I did. And based on the product categorization, if they selected public or not public, they have to set that service that the article is going for public or not. And then that helped me to define the mapping as to, do I do level 1 only, or do I do level 1 and level 5? So things like that, I'd rather have the ProdCat than I would the OpCat myself. That's just me being me. You could also trigger a quick ticket. And when you do this through Smart Reporter, you lose those red fields, the draft screen, the confirm and save, profile view of the ticket. So when you say quick ticket, you activate it, click on Smart Reporter, it's automatically creating a quick ticket form. Okay. I don't know if anybody that turns it on, but this is something that you're available, that's useful for you if you wanted to. Most of mine, basically, they only do incident, and they want to pick the incident template. They don't want to deal with this quick ticket process. But the thing is, it's kind of like if you were in the old ITSM and you saved a ticket, it would turn back around and give you the next ticket number. So you can create multiple tickets if you're in a speed situation. So that allows you to keep that. This is the one that I run into where the console results for number of days is 30 by default. So then we got the 60, then we got the 90, then we got 365 past a year. Now we had to do 730 because the fact is they keep tickets open way, way longer. And I get it if it was changes, but these are incident tickets. And I keep asking them, why don't you close these? And I did a report, and I gave him a report of over 6,000 incidences that were created in June of 2020. And I'm like, you can't see those unless I change the date. So we changed the date. But they tell you, BMC says that it's recommended not to go more than 90 days because now you're starting to get in performance hit. But again, if I have open tickets, I've got to be able to see it. You have to set the chunking in the case of, I think it was back on the other one, you'd have to set the chunking in the Dev Studio and some. If you have progressive web apps, you have to put the chunking on that for the form, for the indicator. But yes, it does have chunking for the table. I think the chunking is 80. Set the number 80 tickets that you get to see initially. Session timeout. By default, it's 30. We set ours to 90. I'm sorry, the mid-tier is set to 90. The default is 30. We had to set it to 90 because we were having problems with the mid-tier timing out and Smart IT timing out before the mid-tier would and stuff like that. So you might as well set that. Some people want to search things, so you could do your reverse of first name, last name. So you can turn that on, so you can search opposite directions if you wanted to. These are some other parameters in the calendar if you want to change the calendar. What I like about the calendar, though, outage tickets. If somebody puts in an outage, I can see the outage in the calendar. How many of you use the calendar? How many of you use outages? So outages will show up in there. So if you have a broadcast message, put it as an outage. So it shows up on the calendar so they can see it. Because when I see it on DWP, if I close it out and that broadcast is like for next week, I'm not going to see that broadcast again. So they're not going to see it as an outage ticket. But again, the support people really need to know that. So I would indicate it as an outage ticket, whether it's an outage or not. Service request definitions do not work, or SRDs do not work if you have actions on them. Everybody knows what an action is, where you basically click on a field value, the person answers a question, goes out to Remedy, finds the other answers to the questions and brings it back. It's kind of like an active link action. That doesn't work in Smart IP. So again, this is where you'll need to go in and do the configuration settings within the configuration functionality to make sure that it's disabled.
Does DWP Advanced work function in Smart Report?
As far as I know, if it does, I don't have a customer that uses DWP Advanced, but I showed you how to integrate that with the Smart Recorder.
That would be kind of the same thing, right? In DWP Advanced, you can probably do actions.
You can.
Yeah.
Well, that I do know because I had to set up a customer at the end of last year when we were dealing with DWP Advanced, but I never stuck around long enough to see the overall end results. But we did build some of the actions because we had to do, like, for the approval was pretty. I hate the approval in DWP Advanced. I hope they fix that, where you could only do one approval level instead of doing a second level, third level, and so forth. So we had to do a major custom functionality to get it to work, to go from one person to another person to another one before it even created the ticket. Yeah. These are some specific fields. You must go for the chunk size in some cases to change it, but these are like the sizes of the ticket console. You get 80. When you do a search for a support group, you only get 80 support groups. My customer has 162. So I said, well, why don't we change the name of the groups? Put them in like what they're supposed to be. And like Oracle, well, you have 10 groups there. All I can do is remember Oracle. Nope, didn't want that. He wants to be able them to put in whatever. The other thing that I did was I also changed the setting where you did not have to type in 3 characters first. You only have to type in 0. So once you clicked in, you got the first list. Then you could hit the letter A, then you got everything started with an A. So you can change that from 3 characters to 0, and it starts searching for it. You can even remove the unwanted applications. The ones on the left, if you want to remove those from the pick list, work orders, change requests, problem investigation, known error, you can remove them with this parameter, but you cannot remove those that are on the right because they're required to have them. So if you're not going to use it, you might as well hide it. Any questions on that? Okay. Customizing Smart IT. In this case right here, I had to redesign some of my slides. It's not going to be on the PowerPoint or the PDF format that I gave you because of this In Focus machine crunched it up. So I had to make it bigger so you can actually read it through here. So that's why I didn't stretch out all my text and so forth in that aspect. And I'm standing by it. Okay. But this is how you can add a column to the Smart IT ticket console if you need to add something to it. Okay, so in this scenario, my customer is using the mail stop on CTM people to reflect the TLA site, which is a custom field, right? No, it's an out-of-the-box field, it's custom labeled. Okay, so he wanted that TLA site to be showed up in the ticket console so they can see that site designator based on, I mean, it's abbreviation for the site, and you already have the site, but they want to have the abbreviation too. I don't know. I just follow along with what they tell me. So I had to go find out what the field ID number was for the mail stop in CTM people, because that's what we started with the requirement. And then I had to go to HPD help desk to see if that field was there, and it is. It's just not visible. Okay. So this is going to give you the steps. I'm not going to run through them because you may have questions or things like that and a few other things to do. But what you would do is every one of these are the forms that you would have to go in and add in an out-of-the-box field or a custom field to get it to show up in the ticket console. In this case right here, we're going to go into the SHR union _data source _ fields form. and we're going to create a record for mail station. And the mail station is, if you notice it, it is in capital letters. So it's like a keyword. If you know CMDB, remember it's asset base. Remember that? That's a keyword. So this is kind of like the keyword search that it's using for. When I use the video that's out there, it wouldn't work. I'm like, well, I'm missing something. And as you can see in red down here at the bottom, they do not have the data tag. So I put in the data tag and everything started working. Okay. So, and I think I referenced the video at the bottom, but you don't get that. It's not in the PDF, but it didn't show the data tag. So I put in the data tag of config-hpd, saved it, went to the next form with the field mapping, created that functionality, also putting in the config tab, which was not in the video. And again, I mean, those two kind of stumped me, and then I had to work those out. So you have those two forms now. Then I go into the SHR union _ configuration console form, and I see if my records are there, which they are at the bottom. And I have to press the button that says the rebuild database union structure button at the bottom left. And all it does is just rebuilds the architecture. Just adding that one action. Then I go into Dev Studio and I open up SMT union smart IT _ ticket console, and I bring over the field. Now the video says to copy it and paste it. I tried that and it's a joint form and it didn't like it. So I had to go right click and add the field up, and it was not a problem. Okay. I'm not knocking the video because it got me to a starting point. Sometimes you just have to figure out what did I miss. Then you go into the console itself, you place it where you want to, and you change the label. So I changed the label to TLA site. It's still an out of the box field, but it wasn't on the form itself. And then I come back to the database form again, this union configuration console, and I again press the rebuild database union button.
So you got the database name alone, you just
Yeah, just change the label so it reflects on the label. And then I go into Smart IT and I refresh the caching. I forgot to tell you that. I refreshed the caching, and then I was able to go ahead and, well, I do that. Hit the refresh metadata. And then I was able to see the column on the left-hand side, and I just dragged it over and it showed up on the column. We actually we had to modify the filter. So no, it did not add it to, well, let me rephrase that. Yes, it did. When it rebuilt it, it added it to the filter that existed to update the record whenever they saved it. But we didn't make it visible in the background to display it on the incident form, but it is on the form itself in Smart IT that they see it there.
But then also the ticket console filter, is it added to there as well?
The ticket console filter to display it or to say, oh, you mean to save?
So your example, you have all these ones right here. If I just wanted to filter out TLA state of INT, could I do that from the ticket console filter?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it does add it even after you added it.
That is correct. That is correct. Okay. Any other questions on that? All right. The next step you can't really do if you have progressive web apps involved. Anybody even playing around with PWA? It's a pain in the butt when you have it in one environment and you try to, because I have it in my dev and in my QA. When I build something in dev, I come to QA and it's completely different workflow. And I'm struggling trying to find it because you can't really do log files in Smart IT like you can unless you have PWA, which I like that because now I can find out what the workflow is, but I can't do that because it's different workflow when it's without the PWA functionality. What was the chat? Did I miss that?
I was asking if we're recording this.
Yes. Yes, we are recording. I'm still recording. It's showing up on the screen, right? Yeah, it's up at the top. Showing on the top, nursing. Okay, so you can add attributes to every one of the forms that are under the view, the view itself. Like in here, the HPD help desk, the CHG change. These are the forms that you have to go into it. Now, if you look at the documentation for change management, it doesn't give you all the forms. It only gives you 2 of them. But these are the actual forms that you have to go in and add the custom field to make it happen to display that you can add it now to the actual display view of that form itself. That's what I wished it would do it for release management, but they don't have the release functionality in that capacity. So this is basically just walking you through where we're going to add in. So we go over here to the incident view of our configuration side. So the configuration screen configuration. We click on the customer contact designator. We go over here, and I don't like the mail station. They didn't want to see mail station, which is another issue I had, because even though I changed the label to TLA site, it let me see it as TLA site in the ticket console. It did not let me see it as TLA site in the incident side. And that's one of the issues I had with change management with the client, because they wanted to change the change coordinator to author, change, the change coordinator to author and the change coordinator group to team. And I couldn't do it. Couldn't change the label. Wouldn't let me change the label. At least I haven't figured that out. So I hid the label. And so now when they actually view it, they see it as just the value itself. They didn't want to see mail station because it would be confusing, but they all know what LAK means. And I can even tell because I could look down at the site. It says Lake Forest. Any questions on that? So you can change it to all sorts of different settings right here based on, you can do an association of an action. You do read only, you can mark it required, even if it's not required in the dev studio. So you can change whatever your requirements are on that side. The next one is to add an action. And like I said, I do have an action to allow the support agents to go back to CTM people to pull up their record, and they can make adjustments to their notification process. They don't want to be receiving emails for a group or whatever, they can disable those. They don't want to receive it for incidents that are assigned, but they want to see it when somebody changes it. They have that capability. Everybody knows how that's done, right? In the CTM profile, their notification tab. Unfortunately, though, they also have the capability to turn it off all of them. So, which is what they generally want in that aspect. But in this case here, you just go in, you click on add, remove actions, and then you just fill out the action as far as what you want to do. In this case, we're pulling up a ticket in the background. What we did when we moved them from an old Remedy custom form to BMC Helix, we carried over their old custom form. And so they still want to see the records and what it looked like in the old school. It's been over a year and a half now. Can't we get rid of this action? Nope. People still want to go back and reference those. Why? Because they still keep those freaking tickets open. They're still open in Smart IT. So they have that capability to go and look at those links in that capacity. I also have an API guy that refuses to use Smart IT. So he showed me what he does when he runs his API. And it's like, well, why don't you just go to Smart IT? It's easier. Just fill in the field. He has to run a whole API program, process it, run it through that custom form, and on the workflow, then pushes it in and updates the ticket or adds in or things like that. To me, it's a lot easier just to pull up Smart IT, but they don't want to go there. They want to stay in the program. That's how they want to do it. So now I have to not only work on Smart IT, but I have to make sure that this custom process still works in the back end. Gainfully employed. So in this case here, we built the link to go to legacy data, brown bagging it, going back, and they can go back and look at the record that they need to have. And then these are some of the YouTube videos that I pulled back. Some of them are, you can see Smart IT 1.2, 1.5. They're still valid. They're still good. They even tell you that it's not the latest version. They'll even flag it as that. And it's still valid in some cases. And then, of course, I got the one with the creating actions is the 20.08 version, which I know we're at 21.03 now. Any questions on Smart IT?
Right now, you can add links to other forums and things, because the nice thing about ITSM is you can create all these quick links, you can add custom forms that you can access. Is there any way of doing that here? Maybe this is what the new tool will give us the ability to actually make it so we're not going back and opening up mid-tier, but actually having it open up in here.
Okay, the question is, in the old school, you could put in a button or an active or to trigger an active link to open up a form without having to go or anywhere else. You can go directly to it. It's like a direct link. In Smart IT, that's this right here. This is the action that you would build to go to that form and fill out the information or whatever without having to log into ITSM or without logging into mid-tier.
Well, but it's still going to open up the mid-tier form, the form in mid-tier, right? It's not going to open.
That is correct. It's going to open it up in a, well, when you build this, it's going to open up in another window and you're going to view that information. Like what we do is, in one case, we had the customer that wanted a custom fields added onto the incident form. So instead of doing it through the incident HPD help desk, we created a custom form and they had to click on the more option to pull up the form, to fill it out and save it. And it automatically linked it to the help desk form in that capacity.
So with Innovation Suite coming, are we able to build it so it looks more like Smart IT?
Yes, the custom form would look more like Smart IT, not the static view. But I'm old school and I like static. And if you looked at the registration in New York, I look at people and watch their software. I'm not a geek, but I do look and see what kind they have. And their form is exactly like ITSM mid-tier. The display is all static fields, and they still reference that. I don't know what software they use, but it's all she popped up windows just like we did back in the ITSM incident and change. They still do that. So people are still working with those kind of functionalities. But with Innovation Suite or Innovation Studio, whatever you want to call it, because they keep changing the name, it's supposed to give you the Smart IT look and feel with any form that you do. Custom form, ITSM, out of the box that they have for you, whatever.
Yeah, that sounds more like the PWA side of things, which is as an example view. It's just like old school mid-tier. Not all the
When you do turn on PWA, it restructures the entire look and feel of the Smart IT. So it kind of gives you a Smart IT view, but it also gives you an old ITSM feel too, because there is some static functionality. But I kind of like PWA. The only thing I have a drawback on PWA from working with it is, as a support person, it takes a few seconds longer to load up than it does when you don't have the PWA, because it's every time it could be our environment too. Every time I click on it, it looks at it and then all of a sudden, oh, your PWA switches, and then it loads it up, and then everything is, if you're used to the Smart IT view, then everything is all in different areas, different locations. But my customer wants the full name, like in Smart IT, if they search for a group, part of the group name goes off the screen. They see the company, which is, I'll say their name, it's Packaging Corporation of America. That eats up half of the 80 characters that you're getting. And then you go into the organization, and then you get into the, what is next? They can't see the group name because now their organization and their group name or their company name is too long. So when you go to PWA, that's not an issue because it gives you a lot more real estate in that capacity. So PWA has its benefits. Another thing is when you do an activity or a send email, send incident, if you want to share the incident in PWA, you click on it, it'll automatically default to only the people that are on the ticket. So when you want to send an email, it'll give you the customer option, the contact, the incident assignee, and the incident owner, and that's it. But you can uncheck that and get everybody else. But it's an extra step. How many of you hate extra steps? So, but you can turn that off. It's a parameter setting that you can turn that off, and it would show you everybody. Because I thought it was a bug. No, that's a cool feature that we have, but you can turn it off if you want to. I turned it off because I'm not always sending it to the customer. I'm sending it to other agents that aren't even on the ticket. Hey, take a look at this. So it does have the look and feel. Actually, I can show you what it looks like. But it's just like any new system, any new display. It has its pros and cons. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, I'll give you 10 minutes of your time back with you, and thank you for coming out here. And I guess I better go down to here before I can